In a computer, you have to have an operating system. What is an operating system? An operating system is the main software of a computer that tells that computer what other software programs it can and cannot run. The problem with our supercomputer of our mind is most of us, we did not choose our operating system. The cultural hypnotic societal mechanism chose that for us. And the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism, which includes the schools we went to, the churches we've gone to, our parents, our neighbors, our siblings, our friends, our coworkers, our bosses, our employees, the media, the government, all of it has programmed us with what I call a failure operating system. And if you put a failure program in a computer with a failure operating system, it can run that program. But guess what? If you put success software in a computer that's programmed with a failure operating system, all you're going to get is an error message. By the way, that's why so many people, when they hear some truth about wealth, they have to resist it because their subconscious programming won't allow them to run that program. And so success and failure both operate on are produced from the subconscious mind, or what I like to call the automatic mind. I like to call our subconscious our automatic mind and our conscious mind our manual mind. All of the results, like 90% of the results in your life, are produced by your automatic mind, which means you're not even aware of it. It's running below the surface. It's happening automatically, and you don't even see it. But here's what's interesting. Other people who are not programmed like you can see your programming. How many of y'all picking up what I'm putting down? And see, what happens is when we hear some truth that's unfamiliar to us, the first thing we do is we resist it because, well, that can't be true because that doesn't go along with my paradigm.
Earl Nightingale said in his strangest secret, he said, thoughts are things, and incredibly powerful things, and a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. See, I say, believing, believing, believing. You will be living what you're believing, even though you be lying.
Where you are in life right now is exactly where you chose to be, whether you believe it or not, whether you accept it or not. That is the reality of the situation. There's a plethora of opportunity, access, and information out there for you to become successful, for you to build the life that you want. But the truth is that you don't think it's possible.
What does that mean? Anything I tell myself about a future outcome, I made it up. You can say I'm going home, but what you really mean is I intend to go home. You're not guaranteed to get there. And see, what we have to understand is we have to understand that we have to become hyper-intentional about our work, or about our thoughts. If we're going to become hyper-intentional about our thoughts, we automatically have to be hyper-intentional about our words. Because the reality is, you can speak without thinking, but you can't think without using words. What kind of thoughts cause people to think and grow broke? And I've noticed I can tell if I'm having a conversation with a person that's not even about money. It could be about something else. I can pretty much gauge where they are financially because how you think, both on a conscious and subconscious level, determines how you communicate. But then it's a cycle because how you communicate contributes to how you think. And so, what are the thoughts that we have to avoid? Well, I think number one, thinking from the past instead of thinking from the future. What does that even mean? Most people take their past experiences, they project it on the screen of their future, they recreate the past and think they're living in the present. But what they're really doing is living Groundhog Day. Most people are living their yesterday today. They're living their last week this week. They're living their last month this month. They're living their last year this year. They're living their last decade this decade. And their life isn't getting better, which goes against the very first thing that God ever said to a human being when he spoke to man. He said, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. Well, when he said be fruitful, a fruit is a living organism whose seed is in itself. The ability of a fruit to reproduce is inside the fruit. So when God said to man, be fruitful, he wasn't just talking about having children. He was talking about, I put an aspect of my creativity inside of you. Now, what's really interesting is he put a different aspect of his creativity inside of all of us.
If you want to become a high-tier individual, and if you want to live life on your own terms and be the wielder of your future, the main character of your life, then you need to start moving with intention. You need to start moving and operating with a lot of power. You need to move as if you own this place, and you will, because if somebody else was able to do it and somebody else was able to be successful in the past, why can't you be that person? So where you are right now in life, whether you believe it or not, is where you chose to be, and that is the truth.
And the wonderful thing is this: if you do what other successful people do, you eventually get the same result that they do. Now, some people say, well, I started off without any money, and I don't have any money now. Well, join the crowd. Nobody's got any money. Most people are broke up into their 40s and 50s. So if you're broke today, you're just one of the gang. The only question is, do you stay there? And the answer is no. Now, when I started off in this many years ago, I came from very poor beginnings. I did not graduate from high school. I finished in the half of the class that makes the top half possible. When I left school, I dropped out of high school. I could only get laboring jobs. I was told, by the way, if you don't get a good education, you won't do well in life. Don't get good grades, you won't get a good job. Don't go to college, you won't do well, and so on. And I believed that for a long time until I found there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people who dropped out of high school who went on to become millionaires and billionaires as well. The reason I say that to you, by the way, is don't let it hold you back. Don't let any experience that you've ever had in your life act as a brake on your potential, because there's hundreds of thousands of people who've had it worse than you could ever dream of, who've gone on to accomplish wonderful things. So, I worked at laboring jobs for several years. I worked in construction. I worked on farms and ranches. I worked in factories putting nuts on bolts hour after hour. And one day, in a state of frustration, I began asking this question: why is it that some people are more successful than others? Now, in the Bible, there's a line that says, "Seek and ye shall find, for all who seek findeth. Ask and the door will be open." So I began asking other successful people, what are you doing differently from me? And they told me, and I did it, and I got better results. I got into sales when I could no longer get a laboring job, like many of you. And in sales, I noticed that one of the guys in my company was making 10 times as much as anybody else, and he was selling the same product out of the same office at the same price to the same people under the same conditions, and he was making 10 times as much as anybody else. So I went and asked him, what are you doing differently from me? And he told me, and I did it. Now, what I discovered, which changed my life and which brought us here today, is I discovered the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect, sowing and reaping, action and reaction, is the great universal or iron law of the universe. What it says is that everything happens for a reason, is that there are no causeless effects, is that even if we don't know what is causing the effect, we trace it back. It's the basis of the scientific process, of all medical research, of all marketing, of all business, is if you can define an effect that you want, you can trace it back and find somebody who at one time did not have that effect, and then find out what they did, and then do the same things, and you eventually get the same results.
Like, some of y'all can sing better than me. Probably not many of you, but some, no, I'm just kidding. Some of y'all can sing better than me. Some of y'all can write better than me. Some of you can, like, dunk a basketball better than me. Well, if you can dunk a basketball, you can automatically dunk it better than me. Okay, so what's my point? But there's things I can do better than you. Why? Because God didn't put every aspect of his creativity inside of anybody, but he put an aspect of his creativity inside of everybody. And so that creativity, that aspect of his creativity that he put inside of us, it is our job to produce on the outside based on what God put on the inside. But he said, be fruitful. Now, the other interesting thing about a fruit is this: because it has a seed in it, when you sow the seed, you don't reap a piece of fruit. You reap a tree. And the tree might produce 100, 200, 300 apples a year, oranges, whatever your kind of seed you plant. Once it's mature, it might produce 100 to 300 pieces of fruit per year. And I love what Warren Wiersbe said. He said, any fool can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God can count the number of apples in a seed.
Because people will never behave consistently in a way that's inconsistent with their program. But here's what's interesting. I don't know if y'all can remember back in the 80s, late 80s, when you'd have like the 8086 computer, the 8088s, and you had the floppy drives, and like they came out with a new software system for the computer, came out with a new operating system. You had to uninstall the old operating system, which usually took a couple of hours, and then you had to keep putting these floppy disks in and taking one out, putting one in, taking one out, putting one in, and it took a long time. They'd make new software, but the new software wouldn't run on the old operating system, right? And so you had to pick a day where, okay, I'm gonna have to uninstall this operating system, and then I'm gonna have to set an alarm to wake up in the middle of the night and keep on putting these disks in so I can use my computer tomorrow. Well, the same way it took a long time back then to uninstall an operating system and reinstall a new one, it takes a long time for most people to uninstall their failure operating system and install a success operating system. That's why you have to stay plugged into information and content that is reprogramming you, because eventually, here's what's gonna happen. I promise you see somebody, how many of y'all notice that when you see somebody who's really, really good at something, they're really, really good, they make something so complex look effortless. Like Michael Jordan was so much better than everybody else when he was in the NBA. When he played basketball, he made it look effortless. Tiger Woods made making birdies and eagles look like he was playing with a child's toy. Why? Because they had a totally different operating system going. But see, operating systems don't just affect us in sports, they affect us in every aspect of our lives. They affect us in our finances, they affect us in our businesses, and what happens is we resist because it's uncomfortable to uninstall that old programming. You know why it's uncomfortable? Because grandmama gave it to me. It's uncomfortable because mama gave it to me, because daddy gave it to me, because my uncle Sam gave it to me, and my Aunt Susie gave it to me, and so I don't want to take it out. My favorite teacher gave it to me, and my pastor gave it to me, and the deacon gave it to me, and we have all of this programming that's not serving us and not giving us the ability to serve anybody else. But guess what? Did you ever notice the people who are failing like miserably, they make that look effortless? No, I'm not trying to be funny. They're not saying, I'm just gonna wake up and mess up my life today. It's just all the moves they do that day just mess up the whole day. Why? It's their programming. And now watch this. This poverty programming, like you have been programmed to be broke. The cultural, hypnotic, societal mechanism has programmed you to be sick, broke, misinformed, and fearful.
We say that success is not an accident. Failure is not an accident. Success leaves tracks. So if you just follow the tracks of other successful people, no matter where you're starting from, you eventually get to the same place that they get. Well, this was a shocker for me because, and I learned later in psychology, by the way, that one of the two most important things we need to have to be happy and healthy is a sense of control, a feeling that we are in control of our lives, that things are happening for a reason, and a sense of coherence, a feeling that things fit together. In other words, nature doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're tall or short or male or female or black or white, educated or uneducated. Nature doesn't care. All that nature cares is that you do what successful people do. It's like making a recipe. Nature doesn't care if you follow a recipe. If you follow the recipe exactly, you get the dish. Nature doesn't care who's doing it. And that's the wonderful thing about our society. It's basically like justice. It's blind, is nature doesn't care. In fact, there are a lot of people who are not as smart and not as talented as you who are doing vastly better than you, not because they're better, but because they're just following proven success methods. There's nothing that will make you madder than to see somebody who's dumber than you, who's making more money than you, all right? Have you had that experience? So what we do is we use proven success methods. We just find out what they are, and we do them over and over again. Quick point, nothing works the first time, okay? Please understand that. Nothing works the first time. What is the average number of times that a person tries with a new goal before they give up? Can you guess? Well, the average is less than 1, because most people give up before they try even once. They say, that's a great goal. I'd love to be financially independent. And then they give up. They don't even try. They say, but I couldn't because of this and because of that and so on. And then they move away to a wonderful place called Someday I'll. You ever heard of Someday I'll? Someday I'll start saving money. Someday I'll get out of debt. Someday I'll lose weight. Someday I'll start a business. Someday I'll get serious about my finances. And most people live on Someday I'll. Your job and my job is to vote yourself off the island, right? And we start taking control of our lives.
As long as you are running this program, you're going to be sick, broke, misinformed, and fearful. Either one of those things or all of those things. Why does the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism want us sick, broke, misinformed, and fearful? Because people who are sick, broke, misinformed, and fearful are easier to control than people who are healthy, wealthy, well-informed, and courageous. And so what we have to do is we have to recognize the program. But see, we have to recognize where it comes from. The government wants you to think that businesses that are successful because the owners of those businesses are evil. But the reality is, The promoter of that message is the one that's evil. Now, there are some businesses that are evil. I'm not saying there are no businesses that are evil. There are some businesses that where the owners have evil intention, but that's not generally the nature of business. The media, the movies, so I'm not crazy about movies, but the movies that I hate the most, superhero movies. I can't stand them. They're so terrible. They have programmed so many people to be broke. Say, what do you mean? Like, you never even thought about that before, right? See, they started programming you when you were a little kid. Anybody remember this guy named Superman, right? Superman. You remember who he was, right? He was an adopted, poor little orphan from another planet. Who was his arch enemy? Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor, what was he? Multimillionaire. Subconsciously. They don't have, see, do you understand that every time a story is being told, it's being told on two levels? There's the covert story. That's the part that talks to your head. It's only there to distract you. And the overt story, that's the part that talks to your heart. It's there to program you. Oh, okay, what about Spider-Man? Oh, another poor little orphan. Raised by his aunt and uncle. Oh, who's his arch enemy? Oh, that's right, the Green Goblin. He wasn't a multimillionaire, he was a multi-billionaire. They're always associating wealth with evil. And I know what you're thinking. See, I already know what you're thinking because I'm a mind reader. You're thinking, but Batman was rich? How many of y'all were thinking that? See, I knew it. I knew you were thinking. I knew, see, you got to get up early in the morning. You're going to catch me on that one. You're right. Batman was rich, but he's the only superhero with no superpowers. Now, which one would you rather do? Have a cool car or just fly?
And so what we have to do is we have to make sure that we cultivate the seed of creativity that God put inside of us so we can be fruitful. And we can be fruitful and multiply because you reap what you sow, but you don't reap when you sow. You reap later than you sow. You reap what you sow, but you don't reap the amount you sowed. You reap more than you sowed. And so while you reap what you sow, you don't reap when you sow, and you don't reap what you sowed. You reap more than you sowed, later than you sowed. I hope y'all picking up what I'm putting down. And so God said, be fruitful and multiply. Why? Because multiplication is the natural output of the input of fruitfulness. So when God said, be fruitful and multiply, what he's telling us to do, he's telling us to increase and fill up the earth. Replenish means to fill up the earth with the multiplication of the things that we create. That's our job. So when God said, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, and they said, subdue it. What does subdue mean? Trample down, stomp it. What does that mean? That means trample down anything that tries to stop you. And if he's telling me to trample it, that means whatever opposes me is both beneath me and smaller than me. So if he told me to trample it, that means I have the ability to trample it. It's already under my feet. Now all I have to do is take the action to step on all of the stoppers. What is God saying? God is saying that a human being's life is supposed to be progressively productive. What does that tell us? We shouldn't be living Groundhog Day. Today should be better than yesterday. This week should be better than last week. This month should be better than last month. This year should be better than last year. And I'm not just talking about better financially, but I'm including better financially. This whole idea that as you get older, you have to get sicker and weaker and broker is hideous. But if you believe that, then that's exactly how you're going to set up your life. I know people my age who talk like they're 100. Guess what? They also walk like they're 100. They move like they're 100. So stop thinking from the past. The past is nothing more than your launch pad for your future. Treat it like that. But people who live in the past and they just dwell on the past, yeah, but this happened to me and that happened to me. A bunch of stuff happened to all of us. We have to make sure we don't allow our past to imprison our future in a life of lack and limitation. Well, thinking from the past instead of the future, that's one. Thinking that you're smaller than your challenges. What does that mean? You will never face anything that's bigger than you if you are operating based on kingdom principles. Nothing's bigger than you. You'll face challenges, but the challenges aren't bigger than you. Somebody say, well, you don't understand, Myron, you're going to die one of these days. That's not a challenge bigger than me. I've already received Christ. Well, here's the problem with a lot of Christians, though. They think they start winning when they die. I wake up winning every day. Every step I take is a step in the direction of victory. But Myron, how can you say that? Because we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. That doesn't mean I'm going to win. I already winning. I'm already more than winning. I expect things to work out in my favor. Why? Because I'm me. And I understand who me is in him.